In June this year, I decided to do something epic. I set myself a challenge of riding 200 miles down to London in a day, made tougher by the fact that I'm not at my fittest. My route was as follows, basically following the A1 down the east of England, through Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, Nottinghamshire and Cambridgeshire, before arriving into Hertfordshire and into London. The route would take me through farmland, beautiful English countryside and quiet B roads in some uncharacteristically hot British weather. I left my house in North Yorkshire very early. I needed to make sure I could get to London on time. I had a deadline of 6 PM, which I thought would be pretty achievable if I set off at this time. I rode a few hours in darkness, which was a little bit spooky, and made up some decent time before the sun rose.
Good morning. It's about light enough that you can actually see me now. I'm 50 miles in to my 200-mile attempt. I'm cycling down to London. I'm in my 5th county now. I'm in Nottinghamshire already, and I'm feeling okay. And because this is a really long ride and it's going to take me most of the day, I thought it'd be good to help pass the time by answering your cycling or bikepacking questions. I put out a request on Instagram and YouTube and on my newsletter asking for questions, and I've had quite a lot in. So throughout the day I'm going to help answer those questions, and in return you're going to help me pass the time. Why am I doing a 200-mile ride to London, you might ask? Well, primarily it's because the company I work for do this kind of bizarre scheme, whereas if you take a greener form of travel or transport to a corporate event, i.e. one that they're doing, you can take it as an additional annual leave, so you get a 3 days holiday basically. And because I need to be in London tonight for a work do, and that's 200 miles away, I could catch the train, which is what everybody else is doing, or instead take the opportunity to ride down and get a 3 days holiday out of it. So I thought I'd give it a go. The route I've picked is pretty flat for obvious reasons. I'm trying to get there on time if I can. Got to be there for about 6 PM. At the moment it's 5 AM, so in theory I've got a good amount of time. But as you know, if you've done a ride like this, as the day progresses you start to slow down quite a lot if you're not careful. So I'm hopeful I'm going to get there on time.
Although I've been bikepacking all over the UK, this part of England was somewhere that I hadn't really been to much before, especially on my bike. It was pretty samey, beautiful English villages and towns, lovely countryside and farmland, and it was pretty flat, which I was glad of because I could do a decent average speed. And it was about this time I arrived into Stamford and hit the 100-mile mark. And I was feeling pretty good.
Just had a pit stop, changed my clothes into a short sleeve one because it's getting pretty warm now. Put my sunglasses on as well. Happy days.
If you've ever done a long ride, inevitably you start to slow down. And it was about this point, after 100 miles, I started to feel myself getting tired. I was making good progress, but I did have to stop a fair bit more to have food and drink and just stretch my legs.
So I'm about 120 miles in now. Starting to get a little bit tired and fatigued. And a little bit bored as well. So now is the perfect time to take my mind off things and answer some of your questions. And I've had a lot actually. So if you aren't interested in hearing these questions, you want to see how I get on with the 200-mile challenge, I'll leave a timestamp on the screen here so you can skip those. So the first question was, what's the toughest mental hurdle you faced while out doing a solo bike ride or solo bikepacking trip? And how did you overcome it? And I thought back to some of the toughest rides I've done, like the last time I did a 200-mile ride in winter. That was brutal, and I'd never done that before, so I was heading into the unknown. I can't really remember how I tackled that though, and how I put systems in place to sort of keep going and not want to give up. But on that, I started thinking about when I did Le Jog, and that penultimate day, if you've seen my video, you'll know what I mean. It was 110 miles into a block headwind in the freezing cold and rain. I'd had amazing 25-degree weather every day up to that point. And when I got to that day, I was tired and I just got so cold and exhausted, bonking a lot. There were no shops open, not really any pubs open. I just wanted to plough on, so I didn't fuel up as much as I should have done. It was all a bit of a disaster, but I was so far into the jog, I thought I can't throw the towel in now. But I got one more day to go. I've been doing it for 2 weeks, so I suppose that helped. And while I was thinking of other examples, a lot of them come back to the same thing. It's when I get cold and wet that I really find it hard. I'm not ashamed to admit I much prefer riding in the sunshine, and I'm a bit of a fair weather cyclist these days, which is great. If I've got the opportunity to go somewhere warm in the winter, I will take it. And I'm yet to come up with a real solution to overcoming that. A lot of the time when I'm doing a tough ride and it's wet and cold and I just get really miserable and fed up, I don't really have a proper plan in place to keep going, other than making the days shorter, but you can't always do that. 9 times out of 10 I end up throwing in the towel earlier, or trying to stay in a hotel instead of camping. If you could only take 5 items on a minimalist bike packing trip, what would they be? This was quite hard, but the first one was really easy. It would be my Nemo Dragonfly one-person bike packing tent. I absolutely love that tent. It's really small, it fits into your front roller bag, super easy, loads of headroom, really robust. It's just great. So I would definitely take that. If I wasn't doing any filming and it was summer and I was just going out for a enjoyable bike packing trip, I would actually take my Thermarest sleeping mat. I would take my sleeping bag, which is on its last legs a bit now, the Mountain Warehouse one. And then the other 2 items, I would probably take my Stanley cooking pot with the stove for cooking and making cups of tea. And then I would take my Alp Kit Vagabond stool. So I've got somewhere to sit down and enjoy an evening with a cup of tea overlooking a loch or something. How's your perspective on cycling changed since you started? It's kind of gone full circle and then some. I mentioned in a previous video, I got into cycling when I was a teenager, properly, for the freedom, the exploration. I lived right next to this beautiful woodland on the edge of the Peak District in Sheffield, and it was just my way of getting out and getting some time to myself and getting around by myself, because I didn't drive and the buses were rubbish. So it was good fun. And I kind of fell in love with just riding around the woods and sitting down and listening to nature, and maybe taking a packed lunch with me, sitting by a stream and just being alone by myself, listening to music, or being alone with my thoughts most of the time. And then as I got a little bit older, I wanted to race, so I felt like I was really fast. And I got into racing, did road racing, crits. I won a couple of races, so you know, I really was getting into it. But there was just always things going wrong, like crashes I couldn't help. And it would end up taking me off the bike for weeks. And I just started thinking, I'm just getting fed up of this. I actually just want to be able to go out, ride my own ride, do what I want and enjoy it. And that's kind of how bike packing came into it. It allowed me to get that sense of freedom back that I'd lost with road racing. And it also gave me an opportunity to explore new places that I'd never been to before. So it was an added bonus. However, it's kind of coming around again. Because I'm a dad of 2 young boys, as you probably know, I hardly have any free time. I work full time and quite a busy, reasonably stressful job. So I don't really have the sort of time I used to do decent training blocks and mileage and just go out for the day. That just doesn't happen. So I have found myself wanting to get back on the road bike and just go out for an hour and a half, like proper training session with the power meter. Try and get the most out of the time that you've got. I feel like road cycling is really good for that. If you're not somewhere where there's a lot of traffic lights, you can just take yourself out for a set amount of time, do a set amount of wattage or intervals, get a really good workout and get quite fit in an efficient way. So I am starting to do a little bit more of that when I can. But I still really like exploring and bikepacking. That's my favourite thing. I had a couple of questions about the bike setup that I'm using for today. I'm using my faithful Cannondale Topstone with the same wheels and tyres that I would as if I was bikepacking. I really like these Panaracer Gravel Kings for road. They're not super great for really rough stuff, but because they're smooth or slick tyres and they're really fat, I find that they're really comfortable. I run them at quite a high pressure when I'm on the road, about 70 psi, 4 or 5 bar, which makes them very comfortable on the road and pretty good with puncture protection, which is very important when you're doing a long ride. I hate having to stop and get out of my rhythm for stuff like that. So that's basically it, just my normal bikepacking setup. It has the aero bars, it's got different positions, a redshift kitchen sink, and all of that allows me to have different hand positions and save my hands a little bit and just give my body a bit of a stretch when I need to, because it's quite low down at the front. Yeah, it's a great bike. What's my go-to snack or drink when I'm doing my bikepacking trips? It really depends, actually. I've made a bit more of a conscious effort this year to eat less crap, but I would normally always get a can of Coke because it's just the ultimate sugary boost when you're out putting in the watts. And depending on what I'm after, if I'm after some protein or just some carbs, if it's protein, I do like some Baby Bells. They're pretty easy to store in your bag. Sometimes go for a sausage roll or a pork pie. But if it's sugar, I mean, there's so many options. Chocolate. I like Rice Krispie Squares bars. I think they feel a little less like chocolate and a bit more like a meal. So that's sometimes good. But really, I like anything sugary. So it can be anything at all, pretty much. I've got a bit of an addiction to sugar in general, but sugary cereal especially. So if I'm ever doing a really tough bikepacking trip and I end up staying in a hostel or a hotel, I go out of my way to buy something really sugary, Cocoa Pops or Frosties or something, and aim to eat the majority of the box before the next day with whole milk. Beautiful, but definitely not good for you. Do I listen to music or podcasts? I do, but not really when I'm riding. Even today I've not resorted to the AirPods that I brought with me yet. There's still time. But on the whole, I kind of like to just listen to nature and also be aware of what's coming up behind me. But when I'm out in the wilderness, just listening to the sounds is amazing. So I tend not to, but I do listen to a lot of podcasts. Someone else actually asked what sort of stuff I listen to when I'm off the bike. I've got a bit of a weird mix of stuff, but music is something I really like. So I've got a massive range of stuff, starting with bluesy rock and roll. I love that sort of stuff. John Lee Hooker, Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf, anything with an electric guitar in like that, or a bluesy harmonica, I love it. But I also love opera and classical music. I love all kinds of music. It's just something I really like listening to when I get time. Podcasts though, I've got a very weird taste. I really like economics and sort of self-help podcasts, things that help you get richer, happier, better relationships, stuff like that. So I listen to the Property Podcast, which is a podcast I've been listening to for probably 10 years nearly now. And I actually used to work for those two guys. I applied for a job there listening to the podcast, and it was a great place to work. Did really love it there. But I used to listen to Diary of CEO. I've kind of gone off that a bit. Just a bit too sensationalist, I think, now. I listen to a Rob Brydon podcast, can't remember the name of it. He just gets other comedians on and has a chat with them, and I find that really interesting because that's something I really like, actually. I like the idea of, you might not think by listening to me, but I like the idea of doing a stand-up comedy open mic night one day, just because I like the idea of it, and it scares me. I think it'd be cool to say I've done it. So listening to the comedians behind the scenes, kind of how they came up with the characters or their material, is fascinating. I also listen to YouTube specific podcasts. I was actually a guest on the YouTube Creators Hub podcast a few years ago now. I do often think why. I only had a couple of thousand subscribers. I think he probably just felt sorry for me. But I do like listening to other YouTubers and how they make a living out of it, how they run a business out of YouTube as well, which is something I'd like to do. It's not the most important thing for me. The most important thing is making the best possible films I can and going on the best adventures. But if I can facilitate that and have a business that makes money, meaning I don't have to work in the job I'm in now, it's worth a go. I had a lot of questions about how I plan my bikepacking trips. And I've said before on an old video that I use Map My Ride, which just doesn't seem to get used. It doesn't seem to be popular at all. You know, Komoot is the one that everyone bangs on about, but I just don't really like it. So Map My Ride has just been really simple. I've used it for probably about 10 years. You literally just put dots on a map and it will help you calculate a decent route. And you can go on the National Cycle Network, you can see all of that on there, you can see bridle paths, footpaths, and decide whether or not you want to go on there. It's pretty good. Alongside that I have Google Maps and Google Street, and I basically just, if I'm a bit unsure about this section of the route in particular, I'll go and have a look on there and see if someone's dropped one of those 360 orbs in there, or if there's already some Google Street view on the roads there, and I can decide whether or not it's worth doing. So that's kind of how I do the route. But then when it comes to like accommodation and food and drink facilities, I actually do have a bit of an itinerary before I go. I write it just on the notes app on my phone. Which day I'm doing, how much mileage I'm doing each day, where I'm staying, and look on the map as well to see if there's a shop or if there's a cafe, or if I need to bring lots of my own stuff just in case. Usually though, I go to places where it's pretty easy to get hold of stuff if I need to. Like, I'm not in the Sahara Desert. I can get water usually from a supermarket or a village. So I don't need to, but I do like to have a rough idea of where I'll be stopping off. Something a bit more substantial. I like the idea of Komoot, I really do. I like the thought of being able to put pictures on and share my routes and get people's opinions and comments on it. But I just find it really faffy, and it just seems really expensive as well. Map My Ride's free, and I sort of resent paying for mapping software, because nowadays I just feel like it should be free. I had a really good question in from Chris, who said, what's the best purchase you've made for your bike? And also, what's the worst? What's something you wish you'd never bought? And the first bit was pretty easy to answer. It's these asymmetric chain rings. I've been running these for over 10 years now. They're like a twin cam shape, and I absolutely love them. They just feel so good on my legs. They just work for me. They're a bit controversial at the time, but for my sort of long legs, the way I ride, it just works, and it just helps me ride for a lot longer and put down more power. I've tried other different oval chain rings, I've just not got on with them. Unfortunately, asymmetric seem to have gone bust. They don't exist anymore. So actually getting hold of these chain rings now is really hard, and they go for some ridiculous prices if they've not been used. So I'm a bit worried. In the next year probably I'm going to run out. I've got some spare, and then I really don't know what to do. I have had the idea of making them myself, you know, trying to get in touch with some factories, because I've got so many different varieties of these. They can't be that hard to make. Just aluminium sheet, or I don't know, surely can't be that tough. And I thought, well, there was obviously some demand for them at one point, so if I'm going to be using them anyway, if I manufacture some, and then offer to sell them to people. Could be a good side hustle, potentially. There was a patent on them that's expired, so it does make me think it might be something I'd like to do. I just have no idea where to start with that. If you have any idea on that, please do let me know, because it's something I've been thinking about for ages. Even if it's just so I can buy them for me. It'd be nice to recreate them. Moving on to the worst thing, and it's not that bad, but it had its pros and cons. When I was a student, I basically worked 2 jobs, and my student loan plus those 2 jobs meant I had quite a lot of disposable income. It was all disposable, and I decided to buy a carbon time trial bike from Ribble, which was beautiful, and I only recently sold it like a few months ago because it just wasn't getting used. But I went for like top of the range everything, Dura Ace, carbon disc wheel, asymmetric chainrings on there as well, and it was a lot of money to do kind of one thing I thought I'd be good at, which I wasn't really, and I sold it for a lot less than I paid for it. I don't regret giving it a go, because I think it would have always been something I was interested in trying. But I definitely wish I'd bought something like this, my bikepacking bike, first, because I'd still be using that if it was a steel one, and I would have got good value for money out of it, which I didn't really with that time trial bike. It was absolutely stunning though. I had a good question about how to stop sweat getting in your eyes, because it's been really hot here in the UK, and this is something that I have struggled with, especially because you'll have seen at the beginning of the video I was wearing my normal glasses, which I tend to do if it's just a short ride. Problem is, if you get really sweaty, it starts to go all over your glasses, all over your face, and it's pretty minging. I haven't really got a solution, other than I have this like pad at the front of my helmet that usually holds quite a lot of sweat before it bursts all over your face. So what I tend to do, I might be able to show you now, take my glasses off, put my head down, and then squeeze it. You ready? Whoa. And then just wipe away what's left. And if I do that enough, I don't get that awful load of sweat that just gets dumped on my face at some point in the day. And that's, sorry, it's not the best answer, but that's what I do. Pretty gross. What other hobbies do I have other than cycling, bikepacking, filming? I've never said this on camera before, but my main passion really is music. I actually play a lot of instruments, and I have a grade 8 distinction in singing, in vocals, which is something I'm probably best at. And then I'm pretty good on the guitar. I play the drums, a bit of piano, play the harmonica. I play a fair few instruments to an okay level, and I absolutely love music. I used to be in a few bands. I was part of the music academy in Sheffield for a bit when I was a teenager. I absolutely loved that. The problem I have now is just I don't really know anybody that plays music that lives near me, and it's all well and good playing solo, I don't mind that, but there's something really special when you're in a good band with good chemistry. And I actually think a lot of it for me is down to shyness. I might not come across as shy, but sort of reaching out to people and, you know, trying to make friends is something I tend not to do very much. I tend to shy away from it. So I definitely would like to get back into playing music again. I still do at home, but I haven't played in front of an audience for like 4 years, maybe 5, which is a shame really. All comes down to confidence, and I do feel sometimes I do lack in that a little bit, and I just put it off.
Baby, baby, baby blue. Yeah.
I had a couple of people actually mention about my dad, saying that he's not been in any of my bikepacking films for a while, and is he still riding his bike? But yeah, if anything, my dad's done more mileage this year than I have. He's been really focusing on road cycling and getting fit, which is cool. We just haven't really had the time to do much in the way of bikepacking. Even myself, I've hardly done any trips this year. I've done a handful. I would really like to go and do another one. I'm sure he's up for doing another one. It's just finding the time and working it around children. But he's still cycling, and I'm sure he's keen to get on another adventure soon. I had a question about wild camping, and specifically this person was worried about going wild camping in case they got caught short, needed the toilet. I did a video on that ages ago, and I'll be honest, wild camping is nerve-wracking, especially when you're not really supposed to be doing it. In Scotland I don't get nervous, but if I'm wild camping in another country or in England even, I'm always semi-conscious that I'm going to get moved on or someone could be lurking outside, but it never happens. If you picked a sensible spot, it's all in your head. But when it comes to toilets, I've never really had that issue. If you're nervous about it, just take a bit of toilet roll or tissue paper with you. And if you're out truly in the wilderness, you'd think there'd be nobody about, so you can just do your business and get yourself sorted. But if you're not in the wilderness, there's just plenty of places you can actually just use the toilet. I found when I'm in Scotland, most of the villages have public toilets that you can use. That's why I take that little radar key with me, because sometimes they're only open for disabled people, and if you're in the middle of nowhere, there's nobody about, it seems a bit of a shame, if you're desperate for the loo, not to use it. Tell us about your family. Does your girlfriend cycle? What about your two boys? Which of them do you think is going to be the first to go on adventures? Well, unfortunately, my girlfriend doesn't really like riding bikes. She doesn't mind it, but she definitely wouldn't go on a big bikepacking trip. I tried it with her a few years ago. We did a bit of the Leeds-Liverpool Canal and stayed in a hotel. I think she just likes to be at home, so we'll go out on the bike and then go back home rather than staying somewhere. But she likes being outside and doing the outdoor stuff, so we'll definitely be going on bike rides together. We've been going on a fair few recently, actually, with the nice weather. But with my two boys, my eldest, he's absolutely loving his bike. He's got two balance bikes. One we found for free, someone was just getting rid of it, and one that's a little bit bigger that I bought. He doesn't really like the big one yet. He still really likes riding the little one, and he's a whiz. It's his favourite thing by far. He's amazingly fast. I just can't believe how quickly he's picked it up. He's two, but he's really good. Way better than I was at two. However, my little one, who's 8 months old, he obviously can't walk yet, but he's really close. I have a feeling he's going to be proper into bikes, because he's the most energetic, active child I've ever known. He's just desperate to play with his older brother. He's nearly walking already at 8 months old. I just have a feeling he's not scared of anything. He's just desperate to get out and about and go fast. So I have a feeling he's going to be the downhill mountain biker of the family. And my eldest, probably going to be a bit more like me. But who knows? The bottom line for me is I don't want to force them into doing something that they're not going to enjoy. I'll definitely keep getting the bikes out, but if they don't like it, I'm definitely not going to force them to come on trips with me. It'd be really cool to do a family trip at some point. I've got all the gear. It's just finding the right time and working around family stuff. Definitely soon though. And lastly, I had a question about today. It said 200 miles is a long way. How are you going to prepare so that you can complete it and you don't run out of energy? I've prepared in a number of ways. I've been doing some slightly long training rides on my ride into work the last couple of weeks. I was in Scotland a few weeks ago doing a bikepacking film, so I did a good few hundred miles there, so that helped. But the last couple of weeks I've been trying to get up really early, like stupidly early, 2 or 3 o'clock, and then riding the long way into the office. And that's helped because it's given me a time frame, a deadline to get to work, but also do some substantial mileage. So I found that helpful. In terms of bike prep and food and stuff, the bike was already ready to go. I knew this was the bike I wanted to use. The only thing I thought about was my hydration and fueling. So I've actually got a bladder here, you might have seen. 2-litre bladder in the frame bag, which I tend to reserve for my mountain bike. So I've got that plus 3 water bottles. The idea being I wouldn't stop as much to refill. And I packed loads of food in the back pannier, just a box, some squares bars, sausage rolls, cheese, little mini appetizer cans, so I've got some sugar. And that's worked pretty well. And the only other thing, other than food, I've got loads of food in here, that I did was just practice my pacing. I've got a bit more experience doing this now with all the bikepacking films and longer rides I tend to do. I just know how hard I should be pushing it and just force myself not to go over it, even in the beginning when you feel really good. And at the moment, I'm 130 miles in now and I'm feeling really good. 70 odd miles to go, which is going to be tough. It will get harder, but I think I've paced it okay. And that's basically it. It's your pacing, your mentality, and your preparation. How much food and water have you got? Have you got everything you need so that you can just keep ploughing on at a slow and steady pace?
Around mile 150 and I was still making decent progress. I wasn't too tired, I was feeling like I could definitely make the mileage. But the wind was picking up, and as a result I was going a little bit slower than I'd planned. Only by a mile an hour or so, but over a long period of time that really adds up. And as I was cycling in Cambridgeshire, some beautiful fields and farmland again, I started realising that my average speed just wasn't good enough if I was going to try and make London on time. And after another hour of making hardly any progress, I had to make a decision.
I've just been doing some calculation and I don't think I'm going to make it. The work due starts in 4 hours and I've still got 60 miles to go, which ordinarily wouldn't be too bad, 50 mile an hour average. But I'm currently doing about 12 miles an hour average for the day, so I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. Because not only that, I've got to get there, find somewhere to store my bike, get changed, lock the bike up, get there. So I don't think I'm going to get there on time, which is really annoying. I think I've been pacing myself too much. I've been taking it too easy, thinking I'll be able to get there, but it's now come back to bite me a bit. I just don't think, even if I put all my power down, it would happen. I'd end up just having to stop because I'll be too tired. So I might have to rethink plans a bit. I'm nearly at 150 miles now. I know physically I can do it, it's just the timeline. It's just massively annoying. Anyway, let's see what I can do.
I carried on riding for another 10-15 miles, and at this point it became certain I wasn't going to make it on time. I was disappointed, but equally I felt that I'd done a pretty decent ride. 160 miles at this point is one of the longest rides I'd ever done. I was just frustrated because I knew physically I could do it if I didn't have the time limit. So instead I rode to the nearest train station and caught the train the rest of the way to London. Picked up my clothes from my sister who'd been looking after them for me. She lives in London, so I didn't have to carry all this stuff, and headed out to the work due. with mixed emotions, feeling proud that I'd done such a huge day, but also disappointed that I didn't manage to finish. Thanks for watching, and thank you if you sent in your questions. I really enjoyed answering those while I was riding. It did help take my mind off things, and it felt like I was riding with somebody else having a conversation. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.